I'm Ali Paterson, and once again, welcome to the Paytech Show. This week, we speak with Fime, who are giving us their take on transactional technology. They're joined by HSBC, who talk about the challenges of keeping up with the pace of innovation. We also speak with payment processing company Worldpay about the future of the payment industry. So firstly, we sent Doug Mackenzie to Fime's headquarters in Paris. He sat down with marketing heads Stephanie and Christian to talk about the financial industry as it stands in 2018.
How is the banking ecosystem changing at the moment?
In fact, it's not just about the banking ecosystem. We are all entering in a new world driven by data. And it's even more true for banks. In fact, they can leverage a huge amount of data they are managing every day to think about improving their existing services, but also think about new valuable services, like any internet player are doing right now. But it's not just about defining how to use them, it's also how to protect them. So it's about security. And banks need constantly to improve the way they protect those data and how to ensure data privacy to their customers. That's key today for a bank. To better work with other companies, with fintechs and so on, they need to share and exchange those data with third parties. And that's why banks need to adopt the open banking approach, which means that they need to open their system to third parties to better collaborate in order to increase the kind of services, valuable services they can propose, but also to improve the quality for customers. That's one thing. And a part of the data, it's also about new usage. The usage are moving, are changing today. We both know that no one likes to pay. We want to shop. And that's a key change that we see on the market today is to make the payment less feasible for the end user. We've seen many initiatives, for instance, Amazon Go in the US, you enter the shop, you get your goods, you leave the shop and you receive a payment notification. So it's very nice for the end user. We have Uber as well, who have worked on making the payment disappear from the taxi, which is nice for anyone, because you have less issue, I would say. And this is the same for banks. They need to think new ways of proposing valuable services and payment services to end user based on mobile, for instance. And that's the digital transformation, leveraging on data on the mobile. That's a key trend for banks.
With that in mind, we asked HSBC's Global Digital Head, Josh Bottomley, how banks are adapting to changing technologies and customer needs.
So what are some of the biggest challenges you face when trying to keep up with the pace of innovation in this new digital age?
I think the biggest challenges, but actually there are opportunities, is marrying what customers want with what the technology can do. So it's not our job to be at the completely leading edge of what technology is, but we do need to understand where customers are. So just to give a couple of examples, we're rolling out biometrics. We've had a huge reduction, over 70%, in the number of people needing to log on using their passwords. But at the same time, we have a big issue with trust. In fact, we've got some great research that shows twice as many people would trust a robot to perform open heart surgery on them compared to open a savings account. So we need to use the technology, but we need to take customers with us and make sure the issues of trust and security retain that. And that's just an example of how we do that balancing act through the innovation and the services we provide.
There was talk a couple of years ago of the fintechs completely taking away everything from the banks. Now there's a bit more of a talk of cooperating. So what is it that the banks can offer the smaller tech companies, and what can the tech companies offer you?
No, it's very funny, isn't it, that there was this story of we're going to eat the banks for lunch and it's all going to be a very different history. Funnily enough, I never really believed that, otherwise I probably wouldn't have joined HSBC in the first place to make this work. I think there is a much greater spirit of cooperation around creating new experiences for customers, making the services work, and actually making the banking industry work. There are quite a lot of interesting fintech companies that are behind the scenes. They're the enabling technology. Those are quite easy in terms of how we cooperate. So we look at things like whether you can use a blockchain solution for trade finance. We will look at different solutions for digital identity that take the hassle out of providing utility bills or other documentary evidence when you start with opening a financial product of some sort. I think the other side that's quite interesting is the customer experience. We as a bank will create a view that says this is how we think it's helpful to people to manage their money, whether it's preparing for retirement, whether it's their monthly spending. But we don't claim to have the only solution to that. And I think there's a lot of space for fintechs to help particular segments or other areas and create an experience working with the bank that may be better suited to particular customers. And I'm going to come back to repeat something I've said a couple of times. It's about helping customers with their behaviours. And in the same way that we all learn in different ways, we have different sorts of teachers, we have different styles, the best solution for you in terms of managing your money may not be the same as mine. But I think we need to do that. The one thing I would say, what makes this complicated is banks do have a lot of sophisticated technologies behind the system. And they're generally there for good reasons. They're there to protect against fraud. They're there because there's a whole bunch of regulations about protecting the financial system that governments use. And we need to make it easier, both for our own use and also working with partners as to how to integrate that and get those sort of benefits. And that's a journey that we're on and lots of other banks are on. And that's got a way to run.
Focusing on payments, I sat down with Worldpay's Ron Kalifa to hear about their take on the trajectory of the industry.
Payment is becoming incredibly complex, and the task is actually how do you take that complexity away and make it simple. The way that we think about it is that we're trying to drive 3 core activities. We're trying to increase sales for our customers, we're trying to reduce their costs, and we're basically trying to help mitigate fraud. That's the principles against which we operate. And those principles work in many ways. Increasing sales might be about thinking about how do we enhance an acceptance rate or an authorization rate on a website. And that's done through many, many techniques, which can only happen through data and having data insights. Reducing costs can come out of different ways as well. It might be about routing a transaction through a different jurisdiction so that you get a better interchange level and a better wholesale cost. Mitigating fraud is just about making sure that you help to educate not just our merchants and retailers, but also about how do you help them to understand the different types of fraud attacks that are happening, because that's not something that's going to go away. So those are some of the principles in terms of how do you start to do that. Banking at the heart of it has been principally about accepting a deposit and lending some money. Yeah. Payments at the end of the day has become such a sophisticated activity that you're trying to make it simpler for merchants and in due course for consumers. Increasingly, payments has got to become invisible. It's something that we shouldn't be thinking about. We shouldn't be having the friction of a payment. I mean, think about the ease in which you can now hail a cab through Uber. People don't think about it. Once you've loaded the wallet, it's there in the background, it kind of happens. And payments has gone from being a relatively boring activity to a very significant activity. It's gone straight from being boring into the boardroom. It's gone from being operational into the marketing environment and to the CEO. It's gone from being an operational activity to being strategic. So those sorts of issues, I think, are actually at the heart of how an ecosystem around payments has got to operate. And that's where players such as us take the lead.
So how exactly can banks navigate the world of payments more nimbly? We looked a bit closer for the services that our interviewees are offering.
So Fime is a leader in testing payment solutions. We provide consulting, trainings, test tools and certification services. And as a trusted implementation partner, we accompany our customer from the beginning of their project to the end. Our headquarters is based in Paris area and we are located all over the world. For many years now, Fime has worked with the financial services ecosystem. We have tracked and been part of its evolution, and it's now clear that this industry is going through a period of unprecedented change. Change is good, but it's never easy, and there are many challenges that banks must address to keep their central role inside this new fintech world.
So Stephanie, can you tell me in a broad sense, how does Fime really help the banks overcome some of these challenges?
So the banks have to make choices which are going to be very strategic, so they need to be well guided and well accompanied. There are 3 main steps in their project, analysis, design and validation. So they need to be accompanied by a trusted implementation partner who has much experience in this market. And this is where Fime, with certification testing, consulting, trainings, can provide the best support during all the project.
How can Worldpay help clients integrate with some of the big Chinese players like your WeChat and your Alipay? How can you look to enable those organisations to work with other merchants and consumers in the UK?
Look, I think the whole scale of the opportunity as a consequence of how big China is and how many people want to actually, how many merchants and retailers want access to that is something we're already doing. We've got offices in China. We've got people there who are helping merchants get access to China, and also Chinese merchants who want to get access to the rest of the world. So, we are already in that sort of bi-directional activity by enabling Alipay, WeChat, and others. And those are just two examples. There are so many new capabilities that are emerging. They're very much at the forefront of the thinking in terms of wallet infrastructures. And it's not just about tourists and students who are working, for example, in the UK, who want access to that. They're starting to roll this out on a wider basis, and we want to be part of that ecosystem to help them.
So can you tell me a bit more about your payment app PayMe over in Hong Kong?
So PayMe is a great service. It's been incredibly highly rated. It's doing incredibly well. In fact, it's one of the services that we've launched where we had a few teething problems at the start because we had excess demand. We had too many people trying to log on at the same time. There's an interesting piece in Hong Kong. There isn't yet a faster payments scheme, so you can't immediately use your bank account to pay somebody else and see it immediately on the other side. So what PayMe allows us to do, and for customers, is for people to pay each other. What's been really interesting is these social elements of PayMe, the sharing the information, seeing what those payments have made, have taken on and been more broadly accepted than I'd expected. I'm reassured by how much people have seen that. And then increasingly, we're seeing people start to use PayMe not just to pay each other, to pay their friends, but also to pay small bills that they may have with other businesses and other providers. So it's sort of taking off as a wallet type solution, which is terrific.
So what's next for the world of payments? What's in your crystal ball for the future of the payments industry?
Look, I think there's crystal ball gazing is a dangerous thing in the payments ecosystem. If you look back over the last 10 or 15 years, I'm not sure many would have predicted where we are today. Things have moved much faster and they've taken so many different routes. I do think that data will play a big part in the ecosystem that we're in. And it will be much more about invisible, frictionless payments. So invisible payments will be something that will be there. I do think there'll be a proliferation of payment methods, and that will continue to increase. That will be a consequence of PSD2 and many, many other things. Globality will play a part in it. And I do also think that at the heart of all of these things is about the need to make sure that we're increasingly solving the challenges that retailers got. It might be about how do they increase sales. It might be about how do they reduce costs. It might be about how do they reduce fraud. Those will be the things to worry about. It won't be about the technology itself. It'll be about solving the challenges that exist with merchants and with retailers.
There is a shift in banking. Banking used to be very, what I call episodic. You went to a branch or you called a contact center. Maybe you went to a website. You didn't do it very often. And what I really hope for our customers is that we make it much more personal and relevant to them. We are permanently sending either nudges or notifications. Even the most basic things, like if you redeem a credit card offer, we may well have to actually, with GDPR, actually say, yes, do you give permission for your data to go to this particular restaurant because you want the data there to get your discount for the offer. So I think we're going to make it much more continuous. And in doing that, we build the position of HSBC. In fact, what I'd be delighted for is people to start saying, I really like HSBC, not just because their mortgage rate is better than the competitors or because the offers are better, but because my financial behaviours, because I behave better as a customer with respect to my money because I'm banking with HSBC. And if we do that, I think we can really reinforce the brand, the positioning, and make that a really exciting future.
So Christian, tell me, what are the next steps for the banks?
The next step is to think about the short-term transformation, how to adapt quickly to mobile and to the regulation. And to do so, there is several steps to follow. The first one is analyze. They need to analyze from a technology standpoint, from a usage standpoint, and also from a regulation standpoint, how to deploy processes, systems that will match with what is requested by regulation or what kind of service they could propose adapted to the mobile. So this is crucial at the beginning to define your own strategy on this point. This is the first step. Then, this is a step 2, design. In fact, you need to define what are your specific needs internally, and also what are your needs based on the regulation. And based on that, you can start to build a system that could be future-proofed. This is the second step. And the third one is to validate it. It's really crucial for banks to think about validating the system based on their own specific needs to check that it has been implemented correctly, but also to certify the system based on regulation or payment scheme requirements. This is the last steps. And we know that for banks and for large organizations, it's not always easy to adapt quickly to this kind of change. That's why usually it's often simpler for them to work with an implementation partner that will help them to speed up their transformation. And this is today the role of Fime.
On the next episode of the Paytech Show, we look at real-time payments. And by that, we mean instant, not 2 hours.